Barnaby Jones will return next Thursday night at 10, 9 Central and Mountain on most of these stations.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Sumpter's here. You'll see I have a spit curl almost happening. Almost Superman-esque. Almost.
My hair kept growing.
I am so happy to welcome back one of my favorite Superman writers, and he's back with a brand new story. It's Elliot S. Maggin. Good to see you, Elliot. Welcome back.
You too.
And man, I'm thrilled to talk about this book. It just dropped last week. Lex Cor. Gee, I wonder who that's about.
That is my book. I created Lex Cor, the corporation, and I wanted to use this as a portrayal of a genius. It's difficult to write about a genius. You almost have to be one, and I'm almost one. I thought I was, but then I had two kids who were both smarter than me, so I learned otherwise.
I understand. Gee, we're all reeling from the events of Election Day, but we're gonna try to have fun tonight. I think we will, because Elliot, I've not only, of course, your wonderful comic stories over the years, but these two fantastic novels that you wrote about Superman back in the day, Miracle Monday, the first one, Last Son of Krypton, as well. And, you've told this story before. We've talked about these novels before, but these came out around the time of the Christopher Reeves movies. Tell me the chronology of these books, and how you got this gig.
I wrote a long memo to Carmine and Julie. Carmine Infantino and Julie Schwartz, and I was still a senior in college at the time. I was taking all these sociology classes, and my professor, Gordy Feldman, who's a great guy, he's still around. We were talking about heroes, and I said, "Well, it's time for heroes to come back." And then I got the gig writing Superman. So I wrote this long memo that we should do a movie. And here's the story. And I roughed out the story, which became Last Son of Krypton. And then, both of these guys thought it was a great idea. And then suddenly Alfie Bester's in the office, and he says, "I'm doing the Superman movie." I said, "Oh, my Superman movie?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Okay." So then he came up with a plot outline, and it didn't work. And I came in the office one day, and there's Mario Puzo sitting on the floor in the library with Nelson Bridwell. The both of them on the floor. I don't know how either of them got up, but I shouldn't talk like that about dead people. I liked them both. I thought they were both great guys. But, and he's doing the Superman movie. So I went upstairs to Warner Books, 2 floors up, and I said, "Let's do a novel." And the senior editor up there, Kathy Malley, who did the science fiction books, she said, "Okay, you can have $2,000." And I said, "Great." So I wrote the first book for an advance of $2,000. Took me 4 months. I don't know how I lived that long on $2,000, but I did. And it blew the doors off. It was the only publishing product that came out with the first Superman movie that made any money, and it sold 450,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah. So they asked me to do another one for the second movie. The idea was this book would come out between the first 2 movies. because Mario had the rights to do a novelization of the screenplay, but he never. He just didn't want to do it. He felt put upon in his.
You'll forgive me, Elliot. I'm going to ask you not to drum your fingers because I can hear them on the microphone.
Sorry,
dude. No, believe me, I'm the same way. Drum them on your lap, and that way we won't get the sound on the microphone.
Okay. So Mario, his idea was that his son was going to write the book. Gene Puzo, who lived near me, he was a friend of my little brother, and he didn't do it. Mario had a spat with the Salkins. And he objected to their bringing in David and Leslie Newman, who did the second draft of the screenplay. So he never did it. So they moved my book up to the release date of the movie. And it just did great. I was living in New Hampshire at the time. And I get this call from Saul Harrison, who is now president of DC. And he says, the Salkin boys want to sue you. Wendy, I said, really? And I said, why? And Saul said, well, when did you hand in this book? I said, 2 years ago. I can show you what drawer to look in and look at the original manuscript and see the date on it and everything. Long before Mario ever wrote the screenplay. And Saul said that there were too many incidents in the book that were similar to the movie. It was supposed to be a completely different story, and they wanted to sue me. So I said, okay, look in the drawer. You'll see the date on it. And suggest to Salkin that I sue him. He didn't think that was funny, but he did. And I called my agent, and she said, well, if you ever want to write a Superman screenplay, don't sue the Salkins. I said, okay. So they were gone, and another Superman movie didn't come out after the second one. The next Superman movie was Superman Returns 10 years later. So I don't know where I was living then. I guess I was out in LA by then.
When the Brandon Routh Superman Returns movie came out?
Yeah,
is that what you said?
Yeah, I remember meeting Brandon at a party. He's a great kid. But yeah, I even liked the movie. Nobody else did, but I did.
Yeah, there are parts of it that I liked, and I think Kevin Spacey was an effective Luthor.
Oh, he's the best Luthor.
That's fair. God, I got to think. I got to go with Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think so. Because much like your books, you got that tragedy of these guys started off as friends, and that
was great.
I mean, you understood Lex's motivations, and that's
I told you my kids are smarter than me. I'm sitting with my 16-year-old son, watching the first episode of Smallville, and about 3/4 of the way through, he says, "These guys understand heroic mythology," and I'm looking at him. I didn't know you understood heroic mythology, but in fact, they did. They did a great job putting together that show. He really liked the relationship between Clark and Lex, which I always did. Yeah.
Well,
but I didn't bring him up on my writing. I mean, it was all I could do to get him to read books that he was assigned in class. Now he's a doctor. He saves lives for a living. It's really awful. He's a superhero.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
great.
No, that's fantastic. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Lex Cor because this is, first of all, everyone, this is written in first person. This is Lex kind of telling his whole story.
Yeah, it's Lex's point of view. I was doing a term paper on Julie's typewriter after hours one day. This is when I was still in college, on Hamlet. And Nelson Bridwell walks in. He was the last one in the office. And I just stayed late because I like Julie's typewriter. And I said, I'm doing this Hamlet paper, so don't bother me, basically. And he says, Hamlet, I love Hamlet. Hamlet was the first modern man, and he was a genius. And it took a genius to portray a genius. He did a lot of Luthor stories too, but I wanted him to grow up, to be the sort of innovator and explain himself the way a Luthor kind of character would, like Hamlet did. Nelson said Hamlet never hesitated. What set Hamlet apart from everybody else in his time, everybody else in the play, was that he understood nuances of life, which is why he didn't kill his uncle when he found him praying in church, because he knew his uncle would go to heaven if he's killed praying. So he hesitated, supposedly, but he didn't hesitate. He just determined that you don't kill a guy while he's praying if you want him to go to hell. So that was Nelson's read on Hamlet.
Well,
and I've thought about that ever since. I thought about that when I was writing this.
That it takes a genius to understand a genius.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's Luthor. You're portraying Luthor saying this, essentially, in your narrative. Saying that very thing in your narrative.
Oh, yeah, he does say that. He did. I forgot that. See, I haven't written it in months.
Oh, I just read it.
Yeah. The thing I miss on, and I don't really miss on it, but I realized I couldn't do it. He invents all this stuff. He builds all this stuff. And I didn't explain all of the physics principles behind what he invents. And at some point, I didn't want to explain something. So I said, and by the way, this thing is copyrighted up the wazoo. If you, I'm not going to tell you anymore, or else I'll have to sue you.
Well, when you were writing Superman in the 70s and through the 80s, prior to Marv turning him into the Donald Trump corporate guy, I mean, sorry, everybody, that kind of was the 80s.
I think John did that.
Which
John Byrne, he did that.
Okay, because I don't know. Marv, I know Marv kind of claims, I think, credit for that Luthor part, but I agree, and obviously it did happen during that reboot of Man of Steel and everything during that Byrne era. So but you still so when you wrote the first two novels, Miracle Monday and Last Son, it was still kind of supervillain Luthor. I mean, we all had, I know, reading it and everything, we had him in the maroon and I'm trying to remember the colors of his action suit.
Yeah, that outfit that Saul Harrison made me put him in.
It was cool. I loved his suit.
It was better than the green thing, the cyborg thing. I don't know.
Yeah. But so, did you think that's the evolution of Luthor from mad scientist to...
Yeah, I thought of it at that time. I mean, I think that's why they give me credit for creating Lex Cor, because I used the word. I had portrayed the company, the gang, essentially, who answered to Luthor in the two books. I just gave it a name in one of the last Superman stories I wrote. So it's mine, I guess.
Are you? Is there any? Because then I understand. First of all, again, everybody, the title of the new book is Lex Cor, and is there? Because you make allusions to the alien, and
there's an alien living in the world that Lex lives in. Yeah, he never uses the name he goes by, and he doesn't appear in the story.
It's Lex's story. That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm for that. That's that.
This is the phase of his life where he's mildly respectable. He owns a big company. He's very rich, and he still hates Superman. And that's not going to last. But that's where he is in this story.
That's great.
Yeah,
I think it absolutely is.
Good.
It's and really, I know that, like, again, the shift happened in the 80s, but I really felt that Jeff Johns, when he was starting to play with Superman, really kind of spelled it out of, and you make this allusion as well, given the technology that Lex created, that he kind of was like Steve Jobs and ready to assume his egotistical place as the savior of Earth, being with all these innovations, and then that alien showed up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kind of ruined it.
That's his whole thing. That's the real reason he hates him, because this was his century. And somebody else took it over. So there you go.
That works a lot better than he blew out my hair when he was Superboy.
Well, he did. He did that too, I think. I mean, I'm in favor of everybody's continuity, you know? Everybody's continuity happened. You just have to weave them together.
Oh, God, please don't use the word to weave.
Yeah, right. Well,
we're about to get 4 years of that. I know. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Here, viewer, Jeff Dyer. Hi, Elliot. Thank you for your wonderful stories. Looking forward to the new book. Superman 400 remains one of my favorite single issues of all time. Because
that's my favorite story I've written for comics.
Remind people what was in Superman 400.
It was called. It was a bunch of stories strung together, and they all happened after the 20th century. Superman was no longer here, but it was various periods in the future, and an explanation of how people regarded the historical nature of Superman at any given time. So it started, maybe 50 years from when I wrote the story, which was 1984. And the country was a dictatorship. And the main character in the story was a guy who found Superman's costume in a trunk at the New York Public Library, took it out, put it on, walked outside, and it's a police state. New York was a police state. And he inspired a resistance, because the first time the cops shot at him, they hit the costume. Then after that, they hit his head and his hands, and they incinerated him. But he got the word resist out. That was the first one. And it went on for thousands of years, one iteration of civilization after another, until he got to a point where Superman reappeared. Got caught in a time loop of some sort, and found himself in a float town, an island that was inhabited by, an artificial island that was inhabited by this family who celebrate Miracle Monday every year. They have a special dinner. They set aside a plate for Superman, and he never shows up, except for this kid that realized who he was dealing with. Recognized him 7,000 years from now, and every year after that, the food on Superman's plate disappeared from that kid's table. So that was The Living Legends of Superman was the overall title.
There you go. That's what Jeff Dyer's telling us as well. And that's excellent. Very cool. So I don't remember, is that where Superwoman first appeared, or did she appear in a different comic book first?
No, she appeared in a different story. She appeared in a story called The Last Secret Identity, I think, where Kristen Wells comes back from the future to do some research as to who Superwoman was. And she finds it was she herself, using futuristic technology to simulate superpowers. She puts on a costume and she flies out the window and helps Superman save the world.
That's great. Absolutely. Did your story come out before Booster Gold's story or after?
I think before. I'm pretty
okay. Because I wondered if you or Jurgens read the other story and maybe was inspired at all with what you created.
Yeah.
So there you go.
We didn't keep track of each other so well then. I don't think we do now either.
Was it direct communication with Julie and the was it just when you would submit a story, were you just talking to Julie? How much did you talk to Kurt Swan or whomever else might have been drawing back then?
I got to be good friends with Kurt after about 15 years. There was this book out at the time called Management. I think it was Peter Fuller who wrote it, and it became the Bible for all the managers in the country. And his contention was that what you should do is pit your underlings against each other, create competition, and that makes people more productive, which was nonsense. It was total crap. But what Julie did when he read that book was he decided that Carrie and I were going to be at odds with Kurt.
Carrie Bates, everybody.
Came in, he'd send me away somewhere. Go get some coffee or something. And he'd blame me for everything Kurt didn't like about whatever he was working on. And then later on, we're at this convention together. And we found ourselves sitting on the floor after hours. And he gets up, he says, "Young man, can I buy you a libation?" And we sat in this restaurant in the hotel for 4 or 5 hours, just talking. Wow. And we found we had a lot in common. Well, obviously we had a lot in common, but we found we liked each other. And I yelled at Julie about that. He says, "Yeah, I did that. He did it on purpose." And he owned up to it. But, I mean, at some point up at DC, we had different departments that were using different computer systems. We had an Apple and a Mac, or a Mac and a PC and a Wang word processor. So I learned how to use all of them because the idea was we were all supposed to compete on different systems. So whenever anybody needed tech help, they yelled for me down the hall. I was good at that at the time. They keep reinventing this stuff, for a long time. I was building my own computers every 5 or 7 years, every time they'd reinvent it. But lately, you can't really build a laptop. It's hard. So
Dell doesn't do that anymore. I was never techie enough to do that myself. But companies like Dell does it.
I just buy pieces of things at Best Buy. I used to assemble them myself,
Sure.
But I don't do it anymore.
Okay.
I'm old and cranky, and I buy things.
So did you?
I hire somebody.
Did you have a dedicated desk at DC offices back then?
No. Oh no, not when I was a freelancer.
Okay, but
when I would come in multiple days in a row, I'd commandeer the same corner of the office. Was
it a big open space, or were there separate?
Yeah, it was a big open space with kind of cubes.
Yeah,
like 4-foot cubes instead of the 7-foot ones that they have in real offices. So I took one over, and I was there all the time. It was easy to write there. If I went home, I wouldn't. I'd get too involved with my girlfriend or something. It was too much trouble. It was too much trouble to peel myself away and write a script.
And you mentioned, you kind of passively mentioned the fact that you were still in college when you were freelancing for DC. How old? Remind people how old you were when you started submitting scripts for DC.
I think 18 or 19. I guess 19 when I sold the first one. I was a junior, and let's see. The year after my senior year, I took the year off. I went to graduate school the following year. And I just had my 50th reunion with my grad school class. We had this, it was at Columbia. And the kids were, laid out around the quad. Nobody wanted to go in the quad. So we had this big party at a restaurant. And I told everybody that showed up, it must have been 40 people. I said, you know why I went to grad school in journalism? It's because I was writing Clark Kent stories. I wanted to know what his life was like. And that's the reason I did. I went to the best journalism school in the world to learn about Clark. I think it worked.
Well, I've read over the years some of your editorials. I remember you did your editorial about global warming, and you shoehorned Jor-El in that.
The LA Times. I did that one. The LA Times, which is too wimpy to endorse a presidential candidate.
I wanted to know what you thought, Elliot, in terms of not we don't have to get into the micro about the election, but really, when you say like you went to Columbia, which is a great journalism school, man, I got to tell you, I went to Illinois State for my journalism classes,
Okay.
and I am just heartbroken because of the way things have changed in the business, and a couple state schools here in Illinois are getting rid of their journalism departments.
Really?
And and it bums me out, but the disdain that people now have for media in general. And listen, I'm not saying everybody's a saint, and we got a lot of people that might look great from a camera standpoint, but really don't know the 5 Ws and then how to put together a cogent article and have an editorial point of view and don't really learn the skills. Again, we don't want to be old men yelling at clouds, but it is kind of a shame because, I was reading Superman of that era when Woodward and Bernstein's All the President's Men came out, and I wanted to get into broadcasting because, it was a great profession that, did what it was supposed to. It kept tabs on.
You know what happened with journalism? The problem is TV journalism started making money. I met Reuven Frank, who had been the president of NBC News at one time. And I said, why don't news shows make money? And he said, well, they do. When they started making money, I saw David Brinkley getting in an elevator and one of the executives holding the door open for him. That had never happened before. This was maybe 66, 67, Frank said. And since then, they've become a profit center. And when a department is a profit center, people keep their eye on it, count on it to make profits. So it evolved into something other than what it was, he said. I'm sounding old.
No, that's good. Here, Neil and Julie Johnson saying hello.
Yeah.
And Velvet Intrigue, I agree with you. Journalism should be a required class in high schools. Media literacy is so critical. I think you could marry the two subjects.
That's true. And it keeps changing. I mean, literacy was literacy for a couple of 100 years. But being able to handle a video game is a form of literacy. And things keep growing up and evolving. And it's ahead of the professors in colleges. They might catch up eventually, but they haven't yet.
No, I understand, and you're right. And in fact, my one of my main teachers at Illinois State does keep her a finger on the pulse of what's happening in broadcasting and journalism and streaming. And I think another problem, unfortunately, is that the citizen media, things like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I did have the training at Illinois State, and then further spent 30 years in broadcasting, where I had editors and program directors to correct me or whatever. And before you go on the air, we got to check this out and make sure it's legit. Now somebody can just turn on a camera, open a mic, and say the aliens are coming.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything's balkanized somehow. Everybody's got a little teeny tiny job, and all you're responsible for is that. When I was in grad school, they were really strong on a sense of mission. I don't know if you know Jelani Cobb. He's the new dean of the journalism school I went to.
Okay.
And he came out to LA to meet everybody. Well, he makes the rounds. When you become the dean, you make the rounds. When I was there, the dean was a guy named Ellie Abel. You remember him?
No, tell me.
He was one of the road warriors at NBC. He was the guy on the floor of the convention with John Chancellor and Garrick Utley and somebody else, sticking a microphone in the faces of senators and governors and things and trying to get them to say something they don't want to say. That was Ellie Abel. That was my dean. I never got along with him. It was sort of like Kurt Swan. We would have gotten along if we'd known each other better.
I just read, God, and I'm blanking on his name, but he was the president of NBC News and started at the beginning in the 50s and went to like the 90s. And it was his observations of the decade. Fantastic book. And really about, how...
wasn't Reuben Frank.
It was Reuben Frank. Thank you very much. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, it was his book. It was excellent.
Yeah.
It was excellent. Here, let's see here. More comments from everyone. Let's see. We got Neil and Julie say, of course, big fan of your comics, as well as your Kingdom Come novelization, indeed.
Thank you. I like them too.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And then Atomic Hound says, Elliot, thanks for taking my favorite hobby as a kid and making it a lifelong passion. I have every issue of Superman in action since 1971. You're a big contributor.
Yeah, I was for 15 years. Yeah. I would have kept going. I would have kept going if they'd let me, but
did they just want a change because of, I know John coming over from Marvel.
Well, no, they wanted somebody new. And they didn't want it to be Carrie or me. And I'm not quite sure why. I think they just wanted to change, which is fine. We'd been doing it a long time.
Did they offer you other DC titles to work on instead? And if you did,
they offered me work here and there, but nothing steady, nothing I could get my teeth in like Superman. I mean, I think I stayed with comics as long as I did, only because they let me write Superman. After that, I really didn't want to do it anymore.
Your Green Arrow stuff was great too, of course.
I like Green Arrow. Not as much as Superman. Yeah.
I understand.
You keep sorry.
No problem.
You keep thinking of paths you did and didn't take. If I'd stayed with it, maybe I'd get involved with the TV show, with the Green Arrow TV show. I don't know. But I never really did. I came out here to LA to do movies and television. And I did some animation. But I kept getting books to write out of New York. So that's what I'm doing now.
That's cool. Absolutely. Did you work on that one season of the Superman animated show that Ruby Spears produced?
No.
Okay, because I know they had a lot of comic book people working on that.
Yeah.
Including Carrie, I think. Carrie Bates.
That was just around the time I moved to LA. Yeah, I didn't get in on that.
Daryl started to tell us a story and then stopped. He says it's interesting that you started off with an anecdote about Nelson Bridwell offering insightful comment. I had a good, and then he stopped.
What did you have good, Daryl?
Yeah, Daryl, we want to hear more. Come back with that. Neil and Julie continue to also speak and say a good Superman writer is hard to find. You were one of the best. Absolutely, man. When it was you and Carrie Bates and Martin Pascal, I think all three of you guys, that was, those WGBS years is how I always think of them. Yeah, when Clark was a TV newscaster.
Yeah. Carrie and I lived around the corner from each other for a lot of that time. And we would go out to the Hilltop Diner in Queens and sit and drink coffee for hours till 3 a.m, throwing stories at each other. Whenever I got an assignment to do a Batman story, he was the guy I went to work out the plot. Because you had very tightly plot Batman stories, I thought. So he was always very helpful with that.
You said Carrie or Martin?
Carrie. No, Carrie. Yeah.
Well, man, I remember the fantastic JLA JSA Earth Prime crossover that you guys did, where you're working with the Justice League and Carrie Bates becomes a supervillain.
Yeah. Yeah, we flipped a coin. Who got to wear the costume? He won. He got to be the bad guy.
Who designed the costume? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Carrie did. Maybe Dick Dillon. I don't know. I think he described it. But he didn't design it.
All right, that's cool. All right, Elliot Serrano is a media guy here in Chicago, and he's chiming in. I'm your biggest fan. from one Elliot to another, is there another character that you'd like to write that you haven't already?
Doctor Strange. I'd love to do Doctor Strange. Anything having to do with him. He's a great character. I love it. And, you know, he figures out a way out of every problem. And if you can't figure out the way he's going to get out of a problem, it's like Superman. You just make it up, which is fine. I love Doctor Strange.
Did the power level of Superman and the fact that he was pushing planets and you know the various things, I mean, he really could do anything. And I know I've read that was Denny O'Neill's frustration. And I don't know if you ever talked to Denny about. I
talk to Denny all the time.
So yeah, tell me about, what did you guys ever discuss, like things like that?
I keep telling him, everybody who takes over Superman before me and after me wants to depower him. First thing they do is make him have less power than he did before. And I told Denny, I said, you know something, there isn't anything qualitatively different about juggling planets as opposed to changing the course of rivers. If you've got superpowers, you got superpowers. And I just let him go. Denny supposedly had depowered him, and I just ignored that. No, Superman is Superman. Yeah, see?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. And again, I love that. I love that sand creature story that Denny and Neil did. It was a really exciting story. But yeah, I'm again, it didn't stick.
It was beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And then he hated writing Superman. He just hated writing Superman. He kept saying, well, Batman's a more realistic character. I said, no, he's not. I mean, he's not. There's no Batman on Earth. I mean, there are 1,000 billionaires in this country alone, and not one of them has been Batman.
No, if anything, we've got perhaps Lex Luthor might be joining the new administration.
Yeah,
with his network of satellites. Man, he reminds me of
Rick Scott is Luthor, the senator from Florida.
Oh well, certainly from a physical standpoint, I agree.
Yeah, and he's a thief. He's a criminal. He had a company, a medical supply company, that billed Medicare for a bunch of stuff he never delivered.
Wow.
Yeah, like $1 billion worth of Medicare billing. So eventually they took the company to court. The Justice Department took the company to court, and one of the prerequisites of the settlement that they eventually had was that Rick Scott, who founded the company, had to get out. He had to stop being president of the company. So they fired him, and they gave him a $125 million severance package. So he ran for governor of Florida. If I had $125 million and I didn't know what to do with myself, I'd run for governor of Florida.
Wow, really?
Speaker of the House.
Say it again.
Majority leader of the Senate.
Yeah,
majority leader.
Yeah, I know they're talking about him potentially being the new Senate Majority Leader. Absolutely.
I hope not.
I hear you, man. Well, we had a guy in Chicago that was doing the same thing, and it was a Medicare scheme, and he got nailed. And he certainly didn't go on to any sort of career in government. He got jumped. He actually started. What's that?
He probably just didn't get a good enough severance package.
Yeah, I guess he started before he got caught. He started doing sports talk streaming online, and this was pre-2010. And a lot of my friends went to work for him, and then all of a sudden the checks stopped clearing, and this scandal with Medicare suddenly popped up, and he was ruined.
Yeah,
rightfully so. Apparently,
Medicare is an easy agency to scam. Who knew?
Yeah, no kidding. Jesus. A couple things. Let's see. Jeff Dyer again says, DC never did a comic book adaptation of Superman the movie or Superman 2. I always thought they did. Elliot should write it. Jerry Ordway should draw it. Or is it possible due to Puzo's deal?
You know, I don't know. My guess is it's not going to happen if it didn't happen 40 years ago. But
yeah. I don't think we need one. Yeah,
I don't think you write an adaptation.
No,
remember Superman 3, the one with
sure, of course.
Dyer?
Yes.
Somebody asked me if I want to do a novelization of that, and I read the script and I said no, which was not the best career move I've ever made. But
Well,
I've made worse career moves than that, so you know.
did you ever write anything like that that you didn't like the subject, but you're like, this is too much money to turn down?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, it's kind of hard, isn't it? You got to be into it to really write something of length.
Yeah, I mean, no.
Yeah.
They asked me to do. Well, I did a graphic novel version of Total Recall, the original Schwarzenegger version. And I thought I wasn't going to like that, but I did. And the reason was they gave me the script, but they didn't give me any pictures. So I didn't know what Quato was going to look like or anything. They didn't know the landscape of Mars. So I had to make it up. And who drew it? Tim Lyle drew it. And he managed to get them to give him a few pictures. But they never gave them to me. So I had to imagine it from the script. But it was fun to write. Came out pretty good.
All those movie adaptation comics fascinate me because of the teams and the art choices a lot of times and the script choices. And Jerry Ordway and I have talked about the Batman '89 comic book adaptation, and he was telling me about his difficulties getting approval on the likenesses, and that Nicholson was kind of a little tough on him. And I thought Jerry did a hell of a job.
Yeah.
So, did you write? And again, I'm so glad that they brought up the Kingdom Come novelization, which is outstanding, and really, in a lot of ways, you really added a lot more to the story than what Mark did in the graphic novel.
Mark said he wants a 400-page novel, so that's what I gave him. Had a lot of arguments along the way. I shit-canned a few of his jokes and made up my own. Because I thought I should, but he said he really liked this one, so I put it back. Mark's good.
That's excellent, man. I really love it. Did you ever hear the audio that graphic audio made of Kingdom Come? Because it seems like they really took it mostly from your book.
Yeah, and I didn't know that until it came out.
Was that okay?
They hired actors. I thought they were going to fly me out to New York, but they didn't. They hired people to play the parts.
It's a shame that you didn't get a chance to be part of that BBC Superman thing that they made. There's two things. There's the Doomsday story, but then they also made a weird little Superman story that I know a lot of comic creators made cameos in the presentation. Yeah, it's a CD. I know it ran on BBC Radio. And they made a CD of it. I don't think it's streaming anywhere or whatever, but you might be able to find it maybe on archive.org or something, the Internet Archive.
I moved out west, and they acted like they forgot my phone number. They still have it. They know it. But they moved out west after that, and I don't know. Every once in a while, they return a call. What are you going to do?
Do you want to?
I'm having my lawyer call them because they don't call me. So.
Well, making this new book, what kind of legal okays or anything did you need?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk.
Okay, all right. No problem.
I wanted to partner with them on it, but they didn't want to do that, so we did something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's free and clear. You don't have to worry about any bullshit litigation.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not worried.
Paul Copperberg has released a couple of the things that he pitched as novels and ended up, I don't know how he was able to do it, but I know he had a Justice Society book that he wrote that he has since published and everything and is out there.
Well, I don't know what the deal was with him either, so I should call him and find out. But
yeah.
The first book, Last Son of Krypton, I had a non-disclosure agreement. It wasn't my idea. They wrote it into the contract, and immediately I broached it. I got a royalty deal on it, a little one. It was the first time DC had given anybody a royalty deal, and they didn't know it was going to sell so well. So I actually made a little money. And I remember I told Jim Starlin about it, and he wanted to kiss me. It was a good thing he was on the phone. So, yeah, strange.
Did you write any other novels with superheroes in the lead?
I don't think so. I wrote a Generation X book with Scott Lobdell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I guess that's about it.
Was that based on the TV show, or was it?
No, it was based on the comic book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And you co-wrote it with Scott Lobdell?
Yep.
Okay.
I like him. He's fun. He's a
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you stay in touch with Carrie?
A little. I call him every couple of years to make sure he's alive.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's good. Mark Miller, the Scottish writer, just interviewed him on the phone for his podcast.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know, Elliot. I even remember asking you if you would maybe help broker the ability for me to talk to him. And you're like, and listen, I'm thrilled he's on the record, and Mark is a great comic book writer, so I'm sure it's a peer-to-peer feeling, I'm assuming. And, Mark's great. Well, hell, man, I don't know if you'd ever want to talk to Mark Miller. I'd be happy to put you in touch with him, because I think you guys would have. He's such a Superman fan, and he's a great Superman writer himself.
I don't know why I haven't met him, and I don't know why.
Well, he doesn't come here as often as he did, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
So, but he's, I just had him back on the show a couple months ago, and he does. He calls it Miller time.
Miller time.
Mark Miller,
Right.
Yeah, pretty good. But yeah, it was great. It was a wonderful conversation with Carrie, and Carrie's just like you, Elliot. I'm not saying this because we're talking. I love the new book. I think it's fantastic. I think people that have read Miracle Monday and Last in the Krypton are going to be very happy. And if anything, it also gives everyone an excuse, knowing about the new book, that they can go to your website and still buy the first two books.
Yep. Elliot.maggin.com. Elliot.maggin.com. Make sure there's only one T in Elliot. That's the correct way to spell it.
Yes, I got it right for the title of our conversation here.
Good.
So, yes, and I didn't put in the exclamation point because I wasn't sure if YouTube would accept the exclamation point in a title. But what? Tell me about the exclamation point, Elliot. Why?
Well, I just got used to hitting exclamation points instead of periods, and I accidentally put it in my byline, and Julie saw it and thought, okay, we're going to keep that there. He went down to the production room and told them, from now on, Elliot's name is punctuated with an exclamation mark. I got a typo in my name now.
I love it, man. Yeah, again, and hey, Superman wears the S on his chest. You've got the exclamation point next to your S, so that's fantastic, man. So, now this is interesting. Elliot, what is Elliot saying here? Another Elliot. 1T.
Hell yeah, 1T.
There you go. All right, I got short eyeballs. I thought he was saying, hell, you're one. And I'm like, what? No. Hell yeah, 1T. Very good. That's really, Elliot, that's all you got to say? You both have 1T.
That's right. Right.
Jesus, man. Oh, God. Do you have other Superman villains that you'd want to explore in this way that you're doing Lex Corp?
I always did, yeah. Yeah, I didn't quit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've got another 50 years worth of Superman in me. But yeah. But
I think we'd love that, man. And especially now.
But there are people who wouldn't. Well, there were people who wouldn't. I don't know what they think now.
Yeah, I do you know any of the new regime that's over there now? Marie and Marie Javins, the current editor in chief.
Yeah, I don't know them. There's one guy I know. Well, I know a lot of guys over there, but I years ago I told them that if you want to get in touch with me, have this guy call me. I gave him his first freelance work. Now he's a vice president. So that's who I'm in touch with over there. but mostly my lawyer's in touch with him. So
Clearing the way for Lex Cor, obviously. Let's see here. Jeff wants to know, what is an enemy's gift? The cover looks similar to your Lex Cor cover.
Yeah, it's the back of a bald guy's head on it. It's a book of stories. It's about 6 or 7 short stories and some little poems in the middle. And one of the stories in there is called Luthor's Gift, which posits that Luthor had a mad torrid affair with Lois long before she was interested in Superman. So I wrote it as a submission to an anthology of Superman stories, and one of the editors up at DC decided he had to turn one down, and I was the one that wasn't working there at the time, so he turned it down. It's mine now. I called up the guy who edited the anthology. I said, "Who owns it?" He says, "You do." I said, "Great." So I put it in this book. Got a Captain America story in there too.
Oh wow! Oh
Yeah.
man!
Yeah, I like
Geez, I'm gonna have to read this because I read Luthor's Gift on your website back in the day.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, because you used to have it there.
Starwind's Howl is in there. It's a story by Crypto.
Fantastic! Oh my God, I gotta
Origin
get this.
Crypto the Super Dog.
Are you selling that as well on your website? Enemy's Gift?
It's up on my website. It directs you to me or to Amazon, whichever. What else?
Oh,
Bobby Greenberger edits a series of books of short stories called Thrilling Adventure Yarns. And
yes.
The fourth one is coming out in a few months. And I'm in that.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah. I wrote a story I liked so much, I kept reading it and rereading it. At some point, I sent it to Bobby. I said, it's 10,000 words long. I can't shorten it. I said, you figure out how to shorten it and I'll do it. And he read it and he said, okay, we're going to take it. We're going to use it. So too many of the people in that book are writing stories that are too long for it, but he's going to publish them. So that's good.
That's great, man. No, I've had him on the show to talk about those books.
Yeah.
They're great. They're excellent. Yeah. No, and it's fantastic. I mean, come on, a lot of these, I mean, he has newcomers as well, but a lot of them are your peers, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's great. You know, I'm thrilled that Paul is still writing new original stuff as well. Copperberg, you know.
Oh yeah, he's terrific. He's in there too.
Yes, absolutely.
Third book, I think. Yeah.
No, definitely, man. I'm thrilled that you're doing this, and this is why everyone needs to remember. And like, I'm glad you're still putting out new stuff because you still got it, Elliot. And there's no reason, and especially in this day and age when you can self-publish, that it's great that you are, putting your stuff out there. And fine, if DC isn't going to call, do your own thing.
Yeah. Well, I was working at an HMO for a long time. To put my kids through college. That was my scheme, to put the kids through college. And I did. So I was at Kaiser Permanente for 15 years, teaching doctors and nurses how to use their software, which is the job of one of the characters in Lex Cor. But then I retired from that. I qualified for a pension and I retired, and I decided I had to write a book. So I'm going to do another one.
Fantastic. That is so great to hear, man. Absolutely. Will it be an original story? I mean, well, they're all original stories, but will it be a licensed character or will it be original characters?
I'm doing an autobiography right now.
Wow, great.
I figure I can talk about Superman all I want because you can't copyright your childhood.
No, it's your story. Absolutely. You just
character. It doesn't really exist, and according to the continuity, in real life he exists.
I understand. Absolutely, man. Don wants to know: are there signed copies available of Luthor Cor?
Lex Cor.
Lex Cor. Excuse me.
No, it's all right. There aren't yet, but I'm gonna put up a site on my website where I can do that. I'm really bad at going to the post office and putting a book in a big envelope, and so it takes me weeks. But I'll do it. Yeah.
Will you tour? Are you going to do any bookstore signings or?
I don't know. All I know every year to year, is I'm going to San Diego. That's all I know.
That's the last time I saw you face to face, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
And my fault because I can't go every year. Too expensive.
Yeah. It's too expensive for me too. But
I hear you, man. It's like I always call it really expensive summer camp because all my out of town friends were all together and we're paying through the nose to be there.
Yeah, I'd like to put together a bunch. The last few months, I've been just working on this book. I'm working on a Kindle version of it now. Going to post it.
Great.
And probably I'll do an audiobook.
I was, honestly, and would you? Well, I mean, you have no choice. It's a first-person narrative.
Yeah.
Would you read it as Luthor, or would you?
I would.
Or as Lex,
Yeah. Yeah, because Lex is from Metropolis, and I want everybody to know what a Metropolis accent sounds like. This.
That's excellent, man. I'm in the state where there's Metropolis, Illinois.
Okay.
And, and unfortunately, man, I bought that Treasury edition Superman reprint, big-sized comic that, showed Neil's designs for the proposed Superman amusement park that never happened.
Man. Those are great. I remember he's doing them.
I wanted it to happen.
Over the years, it's evolved so much that it might as well be Neil's design. But it's kind of eaten the town for a couple of weeks a year.
Yeah, I mean, it really is more of it has a state fair kind of feel to it,
yeah,
rather than the Disneyland or Great America sort of or Six Flags kind of.
It's a Midwestern town, for heaven's sake.
Yeah,
it's a state fair.
There you go. That's funny. All right, yeah. Don is excited to maybe get a signed copy. He's like, but if you can bundle it with the first two books as well. You got plenty of copies of Last Son of Krypton and Miracle Monday as far as going to your website and ordering?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to order them. I'm too lazy to set up my own merchant site. I just want to write more books. So, I have links to Amazon and BN.com, and Alibris is really good. You ever use Alibris.com? It's a terrific site. You can get discount copies of used books. ALIBRIS.com. Yeah, it's great. And they usually pick up a few copies of whatever I write, and they put it on their site.
For a minute, you were recording, you reading Last Son of Krypton and Miracle Monday, if I remember.
Yeah, well, I did. It's still up there. Elliot makes stuff up.
You can say shit. It's all right.
Yeah, I know. That's what I call it.
That's excellent, man.
Yeah, ask for the podcast. Elliot makes stuff up, and it'll show up on. Well, I listen to it on Echo, or in my car. Anybody
Sure.
else. And I'll probably put this one on next. Haven't touched it in a while, but I keep up the subscription, so it's still there.
We want you to make money from this stuff, man. So I appreciate that it's free.
Buy the book, I'll make some money.
There you go. All right. That's excellent.
Podcasts, yeah. I can't bother with sponsors. You had a sponsor at the beginning. I wanted a bad mouth, but never mind. No.
You're against Barnaby Jones? How can you be against Barnaby Jones?
I'm not against Barnaby Jones. But Buddy Ebsen did something I got pissed off about a few years ago.
Well, he ran against, or he certainly, when Nancy Culp was running for whatever government job she was going for, he went for the opposite.
Congress the same year I was. She was running in Pennsylvania. I was running in New Hampshire. And neither of us had any money, and neither of us was running in a district that the DCCC wanted to support. But they decided that she and I were the interesting candidates that year. So it looked like she was gaining some ground. She was getting some tread, but Buddy Epson showed up and campaigned against her. And I asked her why, and she said, "Who knows?
Wow.
She said he just thought I was too liberal." So
What kind of woman was Nancy Culp?
Huh?
What kind of woman was Nancy Culp?
She was tall. I don't know. She was tall.
Well, I know you're both good progressives and everything.
Funny.
That's cool.
Yeah. Both of us wanted to get money from the DCCC, but neither of us did. What are you going to do?
What year was that again, Elliot?
1984.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Jeez. Wow. I didn't realize it was that close to when you were still writing comics and everything too.
I was writing comics.
Yeah.
I wrote a story called The Sword of Superman in the middle of that campaign. What?
I was going to say, was that because I remember Gil Kane's cover with the Superman sword. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was a good story, and I wrote it to feed my staff, because I wasn't paying them enough to eat. So I wrote a Superman story in the middle of the campaign. Yeah.
Who was some of the other?
Huh?
I'm sorry, I was talking over you. Finish your thought.
No, it was one of the last ones I wrote, I think. I wrote stories, on and off for another 2 years after that, I guess.
You mentioned Dick Dillon earlier, and if you have any Dick Dillon stories, I know he was a longtime Justice League artist, also Black Hawk prior to Justice League.
Yeah, he was, we used to call him Captain Kangaroo because he looked like him. And Bob Keeshan, for some reason, used to show up on 6th Avenue all the time. I'd run into Bob Keeshan and tell him that he taught me how to read, which he did.
Sure.
He taught me the alphabet, and I went to Andy's barbershop, and I sat there reading Superman stories because Bob Keeshan taught me how to do it. So I used to thank Keeshan on the street all the time until he got tired of it. He'd like cross the street if I was coming. But Dick looked just like him, and he had this big coat with these huge kangaroo pockets in it, just like Bob, just like Captain Kangaroo.
What about some? How was Gil Kane to work with? Because I know he could be an type A person. Really?
Went to dinner with Gil and his wife. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Cool.
Yeah, and he was. I think he was self-educated. He was a very knowledgeable guy. He did The Ring of the Nibbling, and he was complaining about other artists who didn't understand opera, which I guess was a good idea to complain about. But very cultured. I think he was born in Ukraine. His name was Eli Katz. His real name was Eli Katz. And I think it was from Ukraine, same as my grandfather. So,
wow.
Yeah. I was pretty good friends with him. He was great.
That's cool. How about some of the other artists that you worked with over the years? Who were some of the others that come to mind?
Neil?
Yeah, tell me about working with Neil.
Huh?
Tell me about working with Neil.
Well, Neil was always deprecating, but he was always generous. If I was going through a rough patch, he'd give me a job at his studio. It's kind of cool. So I was writing his continuity comics for a while. I've got a piece of his artwork sitting in my bedroom wall, and a piece of Bernie's sitting over here. And
Bernie Mason?
Yeah. There was a benefit portfolio, a bunch of artists put together for the Menominee Falls Gazette, try to keep it alive. And it was a great portfolio, but the paper died. That's how they do it. But Bernie drew this one in my house, in my living room. So he decided it was mine. So as soon as he got it back from being reproduced for the portfolio, he gave it to me. So it's been following me around since 1974.
Wow.
And I don't want to tell anybody, I don't want to put it on camera because I can't afford to insure it. It's worth more than my house.
Were you part of the group that I saw the Jeffrey Jones documentary?
Yeah.
And
Luda and Bernie and
Kaluta and Bernie and I think Walt Simonson as well might have been there, but
big guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you go to those parties?
Yeah, here and there. I'd hang out with those guys. I liked them quite a bit. But when I finished school, all my friends were comic book kids. All the people I met in that period in my 20s, when you're going through chaos and hell in your life, everybody in their 20s, and this is a warning if there are any millennials or Gen Zers sitting out there, your 20s are going to be chaotic no matter what you try to do. You try to get married, forget it. Not a good idea. So when I was going through chaos, all my friends were these comic book artists. So we were a self-supporting group. Walt was the oldest, Walter. So he was kind of father familias or something, pater familias to the rest of us. He was the wise one. Still is, I guess.
Yeah. I just saw him in August at Terrificon in Connecticut. And he was tabling next to Howard Chaykin.
And
and I get along with both of them. And they're much like yourself. It means a lot when guys like you and them come back and do new shows with me and everything. Because, hey, man, you guys were my original storytellers. I'm sure I've told you that before.
Howard was a very close friend at that time. I don't see him anymore. 10 years will go by before I'll see him, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, I love him. He's brilliant. And, it's
funny all the time. He's always funny. He baits me. I bait him. We've been baiting each other for 50 years. Great.
That's great, man. Fantastic. Well, I feel like I'm cutting into your dinner hour talking to you, but I want to let everyone know again that Lex Cor is out now.
Yeah, it is indeed.
You can get it at Amazon. You can get it as well at Elliot.Maggin.com. Elliot.Maggin.com. There you go, everybody. And not only that, but really do yourself a favor and reach back and get these new editions of Miracle Monday and Last Son of Krypton. I'm proud to say that I have the original paperbacks. And please. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
I had to bring out new editions because every time I'd get a copy of the old ones, it'd disappear. Well,
and I mean,
or somebody would steal it or something.
Well, and depending on how well they're kept and everything. I mean, I bought a Shadow book of, I think, Dennis Lynn's Shadow stories that he was doing in the 60s. And the thing literally crumbled to dust in the way that when Rod Taylor in the Time Machine finds the old books and they're pulverized and everything, Yes. Oh, my God.
I've learned all I have to about you people.
Great movie, man. Oh, there you go.
It was a prick.
Yes.
We've known better.
Well, again, if you're looking for a fantastic Lex story, look no further than Lex Cor, because truly, Elliot Maggin has been inside of Lex Luthor's head for almost 50 years now.
Yeah.
And knows the character backwards and forwards. What's that?
More than 50 years.
Oh, shame on me. I didn't even realize. I apologize for Elliot. You're right.
53 now. I'm not sure. 1971.
Wow.
What's that? 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's great, man. No, and again, all three of your Superman books are great. And we will look for the Enemy's Gift book as well, available at your website and on Amazon, I would assume.
It is indeed. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
That's great. Man, I can't wait to read your Captain America story and your crypto story. And hey, when you're ready with the autobiography, please come back.
Okay. You're on.
Yeah. That would be great. Great talking to you as always. I appreciate the stories. And great seeing you too, man. Stay healthy and wonderful seeing you. And I hope everything is going well in the world of Elliot S. Maggin.
Thanks. You too.
Sure, man. Thanks everybody for watching. More great word balloon coming through November, but happy to have an early month conversation with Elliot to get things started. Until next time, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.